Hey guys, so today we have another roundtable with Steve Hall from Revive Stronger and Jacob Schepis from JPS Health and Fitness. So part one is again going to be on my channel. Part two is going to be on Jacob's channel, so make sure to check out his channel afterwards. We have a lot of good topics today talking about training on vacation, training and nutrition during very stressful periods, how to know when a client is more likely to succeed versus fail, and how to help them in those situations, and how to mitigate the damage done during very stressful periods of your life. So I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody. So we are back today with Steve Hall from Revive Stronger and Jacob Schepis from JPS Health and Fitness. What's up, guys?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well.
He didn't ask you how you were, Steve. Listen to the question.
What time is it there, Steve? It's not that late. It's what, like noon?
Yeah, it's like midday. I can't even remember what you asked me now. How are you?
Perfect.
When I was coming back from Europe and I had to go through like customs and like I just never done that before. So like automatically they're like, what's your reason for travel? What did you do there? Did you bring anything back? And like I just froze up. I was like, wait a minute, like what? I'm not a terrorist. Don't worry about it. So that's one of the things we want to talk about today is training and terrorism specifically. About, you know, when you're on vacation or during stressful times. So like I said, I just got back from vacation, so I'll talk about that. But Jacob, you also mentioned that you've been going through some things recently and some stressful times, and you've been changing how you're going about things. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I guess my life is always quite busy with the business, with family, obviously, and just, I guess my priorities in life are not putting training or my physique or strength necessarily on the pedestal above all else, which means that I need to be quite flexible and also frugal in the way that I go about, training, because I still want to progress. It still matters to me and it's something that I value, but it's just not something I'm willing to, put ahead of other things in life at this point in time anyway. So the way that I go about things at the moment is I'll have my training days, which are 5 sessions. So I have 5 sessions, and I generally aim to complete them within 10 to 14 days. And Steve's thinking, holy shit, I do 5 sessions in like freaking, 72 hours. But for me, it's very much a case of auto-regulating the weekly schedule, which is pretty easy. I just make sure that there's not too many sessions that are thrown in too close together, or that things gets too far apart from one another, as in one session from the next, that there's going to be decay of adaptations or anything like that. So the beauty of strength training is that we can maintain or make smaller gains with far less than what we actually think in many cases, and I've been doing all right. I've been hitting PBs pretty consistently. Tonight I hit the 55 kilo dumbbells on the flat dumbbell press for the first time in my life, for 5 sets of 6 at an RP of 7 through 8 across those sets, and that was a huge win. And considering that I flat dumbbell press maybe every 7 to 9 days, it's a big win for me. And for my main lifts, such as the barbell movements. So at the moment I've got competition bench press, because I do plan on getting back into some powerlifting for a team event at the end of the year to compete with my brother and sister. So for my comp press, my comp squat, well, I'm not comp squatting at the moment, I'm doing high bar squats, and my conventional deadlifts, they're pretty much in the mix irrespective of how I'm feeling. But obviously I auto-regulate my top set, which is at the moment a top triple, for an RP of 8, and based on how I feel at any given day, the load will be determined by my readiness and current performance abilities. And then my back off sets are a percentage of my top set, meaning that the top set guides my load selection for the working sets, and that's really cool, and I think a really useful strategy, one that I've used with my clients and athletes for a long time. And apart from that, there's a lot more flexibility in the program. So I have a horizontal row of choice. I have a high incline press of choice. I have vertical pull of choice, arms of choice. all these sorts of things. And I have a set range, I have a rep range and a target RPE. So depending on time, depending on, how I'm feeling, what equipment's available, there's a lot of flexibility in there. And I think the important thing to remember is that the constraints that we have within a program can be removed a lot more when you have someone who's a little bit more advanced, like myself, because it won't take me a long time to, acquire the skill of doing, say a barbell row if I haven't done that for a while. It might take me like a warm-up set and I'll be good to go. Whereas with a beginner, somebody who's not as proficient in a lot of the lifts, we need more constraints and rigidity in the program and less flexibility, not only because it can become overwhelming and they don't know what to do, they don't have the competencies within the gym to be able to regulate and auto-regulate rather their training in such a dynamic fashion, but they'll simply be relearning motor patterns over and over and over. So yeah, a lot of flexibility in the exercise selection, provided I'm targeting the same muscle group, the same movement pattern. It's not too dissimilar to what I've done in the past. For example, the other day I had one of my upper body sessions after a deadlift session, and I have been performing pen lay rows. My lower back was pretty beat up after the deadlifts, and again I hit another PB for a top triple there of 245 kgs, which is cool. Just again demonstrating that this kind of program can work. And yeah, I couldn't perform the pen lay rows, or I didn't feel that I was going to get what I should out of them. So I did seated rows instead. Take a little bit of pressure off the lumbar spine. And in terms of my accessories, I've got even more flexibility, not only in the exercise selection, but in terms of the rep set and loading strategy that I use on those. So I can do drop sets if I like. I could do myo reps if I like, or I could do straight sets. So it's like 5 sets of, say, 8 to 15 reps. If I do straight sets for the RP of 8 through 9, and then if I want to do drop sets or myo reps, I do my activation set, and then the drop sets or the myo rep sets, depending on time availability and all of those sorts of things. And even better, if I do choose to do the straight sets, I can superset, antagonist muscle groups. So I can superset and pair my, elbow flexion with elbow extension exercises. So that's really cool too. So it just gives me a lot of wiggle room in terms of where I'm at in terms of training and, sleep, stress, schedule, availability, the time I have to allocate to a given session, how I'm feeling within that session, and also, what I think will be best on any given day based on the multitude of neurobiological factors that influence training performance. So, pretty cool. And I guess that's a little bit of an insight to the training and where it's at. So I hope that was kind of what you were looking for there, Dave.
Yeah. And I think like 2 big points are when you are advanced, because some people would say that when you're more advanced, things have to become even stricter. You have to get even more serious to progress. And there are ways that would apply. You probably do have to do on average higher volume, things like that. But what you said about exercise selection is important, because I think Brad Loomis and I were just talking about how I think Dr. Zordos had some studies saying that for the first, I forget if it was like 6 weeks or something like that, of a new exercise, there was the neurological adaptations, and so you're not actually putting on muscle. But I'm sure that was a more beginner population. When you've been training for 15 years and you've done pretty much every exercise there is numerous times, that adaptation period is going to be a lot faster. It still exists, but it is going to be a lot faster, especially for less complex movements. So you really probably can choose any curl variation. It's not really going to be that different for you. Maybe even like from a sumo to a conventional deadlift, it's going to be more than obviously changing curls. But it's still, if you've done both for years and years, it's not going to be as much of an adaptation period. So for you, if it's like, man, this is feeling a little off today, I can switch to that, or I can have a mesocycle of that, and it's not as big of a deal. Whereas if you're really just getting started with training, you don't want to be switching every session. I think that can be problematic. And then also what you said about how you're still making gains basically when you're only doing things less frequently. I found that myself too. I know I was talking with Mike Israel about this, and how I know he's got the volume landmarks, and I don't disagree with them, but as we've talked about before, I don't know if I put as much importance on them. And, just as an example, when I was training, I had like not a pec injury, but it was just feeling a little off. So I really dropped it to like the minimum, like 4 sets a week. And it was still kind of going up about the same as normal. There's been times, like very rarely do I ever skip a session. But when I have, it's not like I come back and man, that just totally threw everything off. I kind of just get back where I was before. If it's, just one time, obviously not just skipping sessions all the time. So while I think the rigidity is important in having consistency, I think oftentimes we actually have more wiggle room than is put out there. So Steve, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Deconstructing all of Steve's belief systems right here.
I kind of caught half of what Jacob just said.
Yeah, your thing went out a little bit, but I think we got it. Just a quick jab at Steve.
Always.
So no, I agree. I think even like the whole learning and like picking up new movements, especially when they're more isolation in nature, they're not big complex lifts. As a like bodybuilder, especially technique isn't even as super important. If you're a powerlifter, it's a little bit more important. But for a bodybuilder, like you're just trying to create tension on the muscle and kind of cause some damage and disruption and overload. So as long as you're having an element of log booking for some lifts and you're progressing on those and you can see that happening, I have no problem with a little bit more variation in there. I'm a little bit more restrictive on myself. I don't give as much flexibility, partly because I don't need it. I don't also tend to give it to my clients as much because I, again, worry for the reasons you said, Dave, like, are they going to understand to do it properly? And I guess Jacobs is a bit more hands-on with more of his clients, potentially like in person. I guess that helps, and he can have a better awareness of how much they know about these sort of things. So yeah, I don't know if I have any more thoughts than that.
Cool.
I think just quickly on that, a lot of the barbell movements that we perform, whilst they're gross motor patterns, they're not highly technical, despite what a lot of people think.
Compared to like athletic movements, it's still just...
Yeah, exactly right. Compared to like triple jump, compared to, any kind of Olympic weightlifting, movement. I don't even know what they are, but I think a lot of people really overstate the technical requirements, and they think that it's going to take me a long time to relearn this. But in many cases, once you've learned it, it's very much like riding a bike. Like once you jump back on, if you've done it a couple of times, like, you don't start back from square one. Oh, I've got to have the training wheels. I'm going to make sure I'm on a flat surface. And one of my parents is, right behind me, the helicopter parent. It's like, no, like you can just jump back on that thing and, get going. Much like moving barbell, again, it depends on, a lot of factors. Like riding a bike is obviously, very technical. There's no force component of the nervous system, which is, a difference there. But, getting the movement per se and the technical component of the nervous system to these basic barbell movements that we perform in the gym, for advanced lifters, once they've acquired them over many, many years, doesn't take a long time to return. The force component, however, that can take a while, and especially as we start to bring in more joints and make the movement more complex and have greater stability demands and all these sorts of things, that can definitely lead to a longer time in terms of relearning the patterns to be able to express the appropriate amount of force or meet the force demands imposed by a given load. But it's not to say that it will take us a long time to learn the movement again, per se. So.
Right. Yep. So kind of, it's not necessarily a stressful time. I mean, hopefully if you're going on vacation, it's not super stressful. But one thing I did want to talk about is for yourself and for your clients, if somebody tells you, hey, I'm going away for 2 weeks, how should I train? I think obviously it's going to depend what else is going on. If they have a bodybuilding or powerlifting competition coming up, that's going to be very different than if it's just in the off season. But for myself, I just got back from 10 days going to, I think I was in like 7 cities and 4 countries over about 9 days. So I was obviously all over the place. But for me personally, and anybody I'm coaching, I'll usually say, feel free to take this time to kind of deload and de-stress. I think generally speaking, that's the advice I would give, because you're not going to be able to train optimally in most cases. You're generally going to have less than ideal equipment, or even if you have good equipment, it might be different gyms all the time. And when you get back to your home gym, you're just going to have to get back to what you're doing anyway. So normally I don't stress it too much, although personally it's just something I enjoy. So something I really do enjoy is getting up early, having some coffee, going to the gym, and I just feel better doing it. So I would, unless I have like a nagging injury or something like that, I'll definitely use that time to heal. But otherwise, I'll still try to like push myself. Again, I know I've heard Mike Israel talk before about how when he goes somewhere, he'll just do something unique to try to like get an overload. Like one time he was talking about doing like this crazy leg workout and doing like high reps and everything. I don't know if I would. I mean, again, if you're doing that for fun, yeah. When it comes to like overloading a muscle, I prefer to keep it consistent with a given exercise. So I wouldn't just throw in like random exercises here and there. But I kind of want to get your take on it for yourselves and also clients. If somebody says, I'm going on vacation, let's say 1 to 2 weeks, do you just say, okay, we'll just get back to when we get back? Or do you implement specific things so they can still try to progress during that time?
Shall I attack it first?
Go for it.
Okay. Go first, Steve.
So I think for my clients, it's definitely a discussion. It's kind of like, it's funny. Most of the time, it's a case of maybe we can plan this as a deload and like an active recovery period, or get in some light workouts here or there. But I have clients who are also like, I go on holiday to places that have fantastic gyms and I want my highest training volumes and like my hardest sessions here. Mm-hmm. That's less the case, but I just think it's different people want different things out of holidays. For a lot of us, we go on holiday to relax and chill, but for some people, that's not what they want. So I don't feel that people should feel like they have to chill out on holiday and it has to be that way. They can go on holiday and train hard if they want to, if that's what they want to do with their time. And they typically can't put as much time towards holidays, towards training, because they have like a stressful career and job or whatever. I completely understand that. So for me, it's a discussion. And then I always the key thing I try and get is some time before the holidays coming to plan for it. Because if they just tell me like it's a week and next week they're on holiday, it's kind of like, well, this could happen mid-mesocycle or wherever it might be. I try and at least have a plan for it. So typically it is kind of having a deload coming for that period of time, or maybe they deload before the holiday and then they go away and have like a week of complete active recovery. Sometimes it doesn't always land how you want it to, because I've certainly had it where I've like aimed to want to deload for the holiday, but I'm like, I have to deload the week before because I'm just trashed. Mm-hmm. So you can't always work out perfectly. And I don't think we need to make everything super productive all the time. Like maintenance phases are great, but people hate taking them. So holidays are great because they force you to kind of do that, right. And then you can justify it because you're like, I'm on holiday and I'm enjoying this and it's downtime for me. So I try and kind of get people to realize nothing in a week is going to go wrong. You're going to maintain all your muscle. You're going to probably come back and feel better for it. So that's usually the case I go down. If people are in prep, I generally just encourage not to go on holiday and prep, because it's just like a nightmare, because it's kind of like, you don't want to be that guy that's just like, you're just going to not enjoy your holiday if you go on holiday and prep. Right. Yeah. But the way I tend to take preps is, so like we actually talked about in our ultimate guide with JPS, like doing the diet before the diet. Kind of then you get to do a maintenance phase before, where you're like, I don't know, you're in bodybuilding shape, like 10% body fat or so, and then you dig. So if I can get someone to plan it in that like maintenance after the big chunk of dieting beforehand, I think that can work really well. So yeah, again, it's a case of communicating and planning these things for people. It doesn't always work out though, so you just have to do your best with it and try and be flexible and realistic about what they can achieve and do, and work to their psychology and what they want out of a holiday. Because sometimes people will want like body weight workouts or something like that, or some guidance there, and you can do like little bits here or there. And I normally recommend people do a little bit, because otherwise they tend to feel worse if they don't do anything. Yeah. So if you give them some idea of like, wake up, you can do a little bit weight workout or something like that, which is super simple. And that's what I tend to do. I tend to try and plan it for a deload. And if I am planning it for a deload, I'll just do like body weight workouts in the morning whilst the girlfriend's Charlotte's getting ready. So it's plenty of time for me to just like do some random shit that I want to do, and just like press ups and things like this. And it doesn't need to be stressful, and then just get back and get into a new mesocycle and use kind of like an intro week or a lighter week, which is always how I start training cycles. So that tends to be my approach.
Awesome. What are you, Jacob?
Yeah, I think Steve brings up a lot of good points. For me personally, it depends on what kind of holiday I'm taking, right? For example, when we traveled to Singapore and the UK just recently, that was pretty much all work, no play. So it was very easy to continue, training as per usual. We were in the company of some amazing hosts, and had access to, regular commercial gyms, and then obviously great facility in Bath, Stanza Fitness. So it wasn't too difficult to train. I think in Bath we were at the gym every single day, catching up with the guys for coffee, and you just jump in and do a session, and it's not a problem whatsoever. But there are holidays and times when I travel where we're very much constrained by equipment, and at the mercy of the country, state or city that we're in, and that drives how things go. So I think that's a huge consideration, and most people know in advance whether or not there's going to be access to decent equipment. If somebody's traveling to, say, the sticks, where it's a very poverty-stricken country, for example. They're doing the whole cultural journey and those sorts of things, and their holiday is about travel and experiencing the world. The last thing I want to do to one of my clients is impose the unnecessary pressure of, hey, you got to find a gym, and this is what I want you to do when you get there. I'll paint some broad strokes and say, if you do want to train, if you do have access to a facility and it's not inconveniencing your holiday or taking away from the experience, try to get a full body workout in, for example, if you're not going to be training too frequently. Get some stimulus on the muscles. If you have access to some decent weights, great. Try to replicate your existing program or the movements within that. If not, just doing anything is going to be better than nothing. And in cases where, they are afforded the luxury of having, being situated in one spot, they're not traveling, they're on a holiday, they're in one spot and they have access to the equipment. If they feel so inclined to train regularly, I'll get them to send me through some pictures of the equipment, and we can go from there. And I'll advise them, as to what they can do if they have an idea of how frequently they're going to train and how much time they have to dedicate to their sessions. But for the most part, I did this recently with one of my clients, and I do this quite often. She was going on a holiday, and she said, "What do I do?" So she was going to Bali. She had access to regular facilities, and I said, "I want you to write your own program while you're there. Show me what you can do for 2 weeks. Write a program, send it through to me. I'll have a look." And explain to me why you did these things, and she sent it through, and it looked freaking pretty good. She, had her sets, her rep ranges, she had her RPs. I was like, great, go for it. And I'm like, why did you?
She doesn't need you anymore.
Pretty much. Lost a client. That's how to lose a client 101. Well, then, funnily enough, she posted on Instagram when she was doing a workout. She's like, now I remember why I have a coach write my programs. And yeah, I really try to empower my clients and teach them through the process of coaching so that they have the knowledge and the skills to be able to navigate these situations. Because I think if you're programming for someone and you just give them the plan, and whilst most people may not be interested in the whys behind things, they just want to be told what and how. Those very proximate questions of, answering the problems that they have on a given level, that they're dealing with, then, that's fine. You might need to give them some instruction. But a lot of my clients come to me for the more ultimate question. So not ultimate in the sense that it's superior to those proximate questions of what and how, but it's ultimate in the sense that it explains the higher levels of the problems that they're trying to answer, which is the why. So, why we do certain things. So I try to teach my clients why we do certain things, and inform them about the decisions I make in their program. So if I make any adjustments, or if I, change rep ranges, loading zones, exercises, RPEs, all those sorts of things, and this is a process that occurs over months and years, obviously. Then hopefully when they get to these situations where they're on holidays, well, they know the why, therefore they can answer the what and the how. And they can navigate those situations on their own, like an adult, without being super dependent on me, their coach. And that when I can do that, and when I have clients like Kate, the one that I was just referring to, go ahead and show me that she knows the whys, that's super pleasing. And that's how I approach these kind of situations. And that goes for not just holidays, that also goes for super stressful periods. I prefer my clients not to be texting me or emailing me, multiple times during the week saying, "Oh my God, had a bad sleep last night. Do I do the same load that you prescribed, or should I decrease sets, or I felt a bit of a twinge in my lower back. What do I do?" If I can initially answer those what and hows for them, so those proximate questions, by giving them the immediate plan. Okay, this is what we're going to do. But if I also then give them the ultimate reasons why, which is answering the ultimate question, over time, the more they see that process unfold of, okay, I've got this problem, the proximate questions of what and how, I give them those answers, and then I show them the ultimate question of why I gave them those answers, and that gives them the framework to then start solving most of these problems on their own. That's probably a really convoluted and overly sophisticated way to answer that question, but yeah, take it for what it's worth. And I think if more coaches can do this, believe it or not, you get a lot more clients, because you have a greater value to them, because they're always going to be facing new problems as a function of evolving in society and going through the training process. Like, there's never going to be the same problem repeating itself, hopefully, if you're doing a good job. And that way, they continue to learn and they can continue to solve their own problems on their own. And that makes me very happy, because it means I'm solving less problems.
Yep. And what's funny is, I think, obviously we're talking about the training on the vacations or stressful periods now, but I think actually a lot less bad can happen with the training in those 2 weeks than can happen nutritionally, right? Even if you didn't train at all for 2 weeks, you're really not going to lose much, right? Other than, you're probably going to be a little weaker when you come back, but it's not like you're going to lose much muscle tissue. But nutritionally, especially like you said, Steve, if somebody's doing a contest prep,
depends what kind of holiday you have, man. Some of my clients, they go to Europe, and you Europeans, Steve, man, you guys are wild. These festivals like, what's it called? Ultra Music Festival? Is it? No, it's not Ultra Music Festival. What's it called? Tomorrowland?
Okay.
Yeah,
I think I've heard of.
A lot of guys lose a lot of muscle there. That's like, like a week straight of partying, Dave.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it could happen, but
right, man.
I gotta get some more festivals, I guess. But I think, like, nutritionally, I think an anecdote for myself here would be a good example, because I've been on, I think, like 6 cruises now. This is my 6th one, and all but like my first one, I went into it dieting. I was trying to be as lean as possible. And it almost became like comical among my friends and I how much weight I would gain on a cruise. Because like back then, I definitely had a less healthy relationship with food. And cruises, I don't know if you guys have been on them, but it's literally free, unlimited food 24/7. And I mean, if I was going from a cut, I would literally gain like 10 to 15 pounds in a week. I mean, I would have like edema.
That's impressive. Steve's been trying to gain that much weight for the last like 18 months, man.
Just go on a cruise, man. But it would be not good. And of course, a lot of that would be temporary, but a lot of it wouldn't be. I mean, I would eat like an excessive amount. And this last one, I didn't diet at all. Like I didn't really care about dieting. So I went onto it at 197. And I've been surprised, because I still felt like I was eating a ton of food. But obviously, the more in a bulking phase you are, the more it feels like you're eating a lot, just because you're so full, right? And I'm not even in a bulking phase. I'm actually just kind of maintaining. But I went in at 197, and I'm eating so much food, or what it feels like so much food. And I get back and I weighed in this morning, and I was 196, which I was actually kind of shocked about, because it felt like I was eating a ton. And like I said, very calorie dense food, like desserts, just very fatty foods. And because I wasn't dieting, I wasn't going in with this ravenous hunger. My body wasn't primed to store all this fat. And so I'll usually ask somebody like, are you, like, what is your purpose for the vacation, obviously? But if it's somebody I'm training, I can see if like what kind of phase they're in. And if they're dieting, I'll put in a lot more, I wouldn't say restrictions, but I'll try to give them like helpful tips to mitigate the damage. If somebody's kind of in a gaining phase, usually they don't necessarily even want to eat that much more than they're already eating. So if anything, sometimes they'll actually take that time to not be in a surplus, because if they're somebody who has to force feed all the time, they just don't want to think about that during vacation. So they'll just kind of eat what they want, in which case losing weight isn't too uncommon. But if they're dieting, we will definitely have to have a discussion on, okay, maybe have a treat here and there, but just because you had, you know, one ice cream cone doesn't mean you then have to go back for like 3 more ice cream cones, you know, just like, I think it happens a lot, especially contest prep, but even just regular dieting. I think you see this phase as, oh, this doesn't count. This is my vacation. And before they know it, they've gained like legitimately like 4 or 5 pounds in a week. So I think that's when the conversations need to be had.
Who wants to attack it first? Me again?
Go for it.
You guys, Steve.
Okay. So I thought you brought one really big point I don't think many people think about is the phase you're in. Because for me right now, like peak in a bulk phase, if I went on holiday, I'd probably struggle to actually eat enough and I'd probably come back lighter. Whereas post contest, it's super easy to overeat. So I think a good general rule of thumb is with your clients is if you can do it, don't let them diet into a holiday. Maybe have a couple of weeks or a week at maintenance just to level things out. It allows body water to somewhat stabilize, allows hunger to get a little bit more under control, and then they can go on holiday and not feel like they have to like binge. They've kind of restricted, so they're setting themselves up for that sort of binge almost, which I see a lot actually. Even like if people were going out on the weekend and they're like, can I restrict all week and then have more on the weekend? I'm kind of like, yes, but I'd almost prefer it reactive than proactive, because if they're reactive, maybe they won't have as much as they think on the weekend. Whereas if they're proactive, they will certainly set themselves up to go do it. So yeah, with holidays, I tend to like them not to go into it dieting. Some people I'm fine with it because like everyone's an individual. Some people I work with are just like robotic. It doesn't matter if they're on holiday. It doesn't matter where they are. They're going to hit their macros or they're going to like stay in control. And it's almost for them switching off is the hard thing. Whereas some people, you know, they're going to switch off way too hard. So you almost have to prepare them for the holiday so that they're not going to kind of wreck themselves whilst they're away. So I think that's one good strategy, at least, like not dieting into the holiday, because then everything's just way more under control and you don't feel the need to go and eat way more. And then if they are dieting into a holiday, or even, God forbid, dieting on holiday, the strategy you talked about there, Dave, where you're like focus on protein and veggies as much as you can, that's a great call. But like Jacob said, with different countries, with access to gyms and things, the same's for food. Like some countries, you're just not going to find protein easily. Like I think Bali or like Thailand, I imagine, is like pretty shitty for that sort of thing. So I always am.
It's hard to find, just to add to that point, it's hard to find cheap and convenient protein. But it's very easy to go get, you know, fish. When I was in Thailand, you know, I would eat prawns and grilled calamari for lunch and dinner. And in that sense, it's super easy. But you can't, or Thailand's different. Thailand, you can get a lot of protein and stuff, but Bali is like horrible. You can't get like a protein bar, protein shake, things like that. So it's possible, but it does require a lot of work.
Yeah, so I think some people aren't prepared to do that, and they're not prepared to think outside the box a little bit, like just like buy some, like dairy is often in many countries, you can get dairy, has tons of protein. So people quite often aren't willing to do that. So I do often recommend as well by default is like take whey protein powder with you, like 1 kilo bag or something, or like a 500 kilo bag or some samples. That can go a really long way, and I'm always surprised how much that helps. Jacob is completely frozen. Oh, there he's back. So I'm always surprised how much just taking some protein powder goes. Like have a couple of scoops in the morning, at night, and you've already like really helped yourself out. That's also going to help with satiety. And then taking protein bars if you're able to do that, because depending where you go, protein bars aren't always accessible, and that can really help tide you through like meals, or maybe you eat one of those instead of eating a dessert that your kind of better half might have or whatever. So that can be really helpful. And then I just recommend basic good diet habits, like keep mindful, do enjoy yourself, like have a dessert, maybe don't have like 3 a day, try and limit that. Maybe have one indulgent meal rather than all indulgent meals, because they're not going to enjoy feeling the way that that's going to make them feel anyway. They're not going to get as much from that. And then just generally keeping active. Most of the time, if people are going like venturing around cities or whatever it might be, they probably get like double their step count as normal. So I'm less concerned about them being on point, like with like maybe nailing their calories and things, because if they're over a bit, they're probably more than making up for it with all the activity they're doing. So I just generally recommend like stay active, stay on your feet, don't stress about anything, make sure to try and hit protein every meal. And that's about how I go.
Yeah. And real quick before Jacob jumps in, I mean, one, the step count is interesting, just because you're right. Like even on this trip, you know, I was We went up like Mount Etna, Pompeii. Like there was like all these places that we were hiking, and I looked at my step count, and most days it was like 10 to 15,000, which isn't a ton, but I mean, my normal is like 3,000. Like I really don't walk around much at all. You know, I kind of just go to work and that's it. So it was a lot more than normal. But what you said about doing it like retroactively versus like proactively for even like on a week scale, I think is important, because even if you're like, okay, I'm gonna really not eat a lot for these 5 days, you're absolutely gonna end up eating more on the weekends. And sometimes you might want to do that, you know, like if I don't know, like Thanksgiving's coming up here, and you want to eat a lot. Like there are certain instances where you might want to be able to eat a lot because that's part of the enjoyment of the day. Again, Thanksgiving, right. I think is a good example where that day is kind of focused around that. But most of the time, yeah, I would say don't change that much, and then you can kind of deal with it after. And more than likely, you're not going to eat then, you know, maybe 1,000 calories over what you normally eat. You can make that up in a day or two easily. So I like that point.
Yeah, so I think Steve pretty much touched on most of the key points, and I'll reiterate those and give some additional considerations. But the three big things for me in terms of the diet advice I give to a client if they are going on holidays is dependent on three things. So the first is their current diet and training phase. So again, if they're massing, probably not going to be too much of an issue. If they're cutting, how serious is that cut? Are they at the end of the cut, midway through the cut, or is that cut, amidst a timeline where we have a certain date where they need to achieve a certain look or body weight? For example, if I have a strength athlete competing in a weight-restricted sport, that's going to be a factor as well. So that will be one consideration as to how I approach things. The second will be individual factors. So again, like Steve mentioned, some people are going to be highly susceptible to overeating, and generally the people who are more genetically inclined to overeat will also see a reduction in NEAT when they do overeat because they feel like a sloth and they're just going to be generally less active. This is me, for example. If I go to town at a buffet, it's like I'm on the couch, I don't want to move for a couple of hours. Whereas I know my brother, despite being born from the same parents, if he overeats, he's up fidgeting. He sees that increase in non-exercise activity thermogenesis in response to overfeeding. So that's certainly a factor, as well as the psychology that people generally have around food. If they feel super restricted from the previous dieting phase, or they're just generally somebody who's a bit of an extremist. They're either all in or they're not. That plays a big role. And then the third consideration is the type of holiday. Like you were talking about, Dave, the advice I give someone is going to be purely dependent on what type of holiday it is. If they're going to, hike mountains and explore the world, so this is where I categorize a vacation into two distinct types. It's either a holiday, which is generally staying put, sitting on your ass, buffet breakfast, go sunbake, pool, beach, lunch, more food, and it's very much, relaxing. Then there's going to be greater access to food. People are going to be more likely to overeat and less likely to expend calories than if they are traveling, which is the second category of holiday, where they're generally going to be up very early. They're going to be moving a lot more. They're going to be more physically active. They're not going to have access to as much food as often. So that will play a factor as well. But generally what I do for holidays, for most people, is I will give them a diet break before the holiday. If they're quite dieted down, so I'll diet them down, reverse them up, and then I'll give them a diet break the week before so that we can hopefully offset some of the hunger. And I just did this with a guy who went to Hawaii, because Hawaii is not a traveling holiday. It is, it is a holiday filled with gluttony. Basically, the food over there, from what I've heard, is just laden with calories. All people do is, eat and lounge around, right? So we had the diet break the week before, and he messaged me, within the first couple of days, like, man, I haven't even, wanted to eat because I'm, feeling pretty good after the diet break. And he lost like 10 kilos over, 16 weeks. So he dieted down quite a bit. And generally with these kind of situations, what I'll advise is, if the client's willing to break the holiday up into, two phases. It's like the first, part of the holiday. Let's try and keep as much of your regular diet habits around, because generally people feel better, when they do that, provided there's not too much restraint. I'll say, go to the gym if you can, stay a little bit more active, try to eat protein at every meal, and, opt for, meals that are lean and green if you're going out. So, meat, veg, those kind of things. And try to have one square meal a day, where you just eat whatever you want. So not seconds or thirds, like Steve said, but it's like, cool, I'll have a main, and, maybe a dessert. And then I'll say, and then the back end of the holiday, I'll give you the choice. You're an adult. You can make the decision. You can either keep that behavior up if you feel like you're still getting to enjoy, the foods and the social aspects that come with being able to eat out and all those sorts of things. Or you can just, have free reign, try to have square meals, a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and, try to make sure that you're not having two shitty meals in a row. That's my basic rule of thumb. If you're having, a big breakfast and you want to, sort of splurge a little at breakfast and have, waffles, pancakes, and all these kind of things at the buffet, it's like, well, make sure your lunch is, half decent. Then you can go again at dinner if you really want. And I'll usually couple that advice with, if you are going to go this option where you splurge a little bit, try to go light on during the day and save those calories for the end of the day when, you probably have less time to continually overeat. So that's just the general advice that I give people amongst all the rest, like protein, fiber, take, protein powder and protein bars if they're, serious about, coming back in half decent shape. But again, all of this is like super dependent on those three factors that I outlined. And yeah, the advice generally forms as a function of those.